I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, August the 20th, and going to talk about going for broke, and I mean the bad kind here. Last couple of weeks I've had more people call, send me messages, and talk about how they don't know if they're going to be able to make it through this time. Your backgrounders did not make any money on their cattle. You know, they've got expenses, they count on that money all the year. They've got cash rent to pay in a lot of cases. Your cow-calf guys are not getting enough for their calves, and after that rough winter that they had last winter, it costs so much more than normal to raise those cattle and not getting paid for them like they're used to, and it's really getting tough. And these guys that have retained ownership, fed cattle or put cattle together and put on feed, and a lot of those smaller guys don't hedge, or they don't completely hedge. You know, they might buy a put or something like that, but they don't completely hedge. They've got to make some money at some time or another. They don't handle enough cattle to get by on the basis like your big corporate feeders do. And they need a market position. They need real money to buy things, to spend on inputs, to replace equipment that they need. And it's really getting tough. And I tell you what, guys, you know, they lose money, and you drive by and you hear that these farmers and ranchers are having a hard time, and you think, I don't feel too sorry for them. Look at them, they got an RV over there and a couple of big tractors and awful nice home, and they're driving new pickups and things like that. Yeah, but that's their way of life. They've been working on that probably at least a couple of generations, trying to build equity, or the percentage of their investment there, including their land and their equipment and everything, the percentage of maybe their cow herd too, the percentage of that investment that they actually own, the equity that they have in that operation, they continue to try to build that. And in a good year, you may not get a bigger paycheck, you might just own a bigger portion of your farm or ranch, and that's what you work towards, trying to get that as close to being paid off as you can. But in years like we've had recently, and this one being the worst, you just lose so much of that equity, and then you know you're kind of in trouble. But finally, when you go into your lending institution, then you find out how far behind you are on your debt to asset ratios and things like that, and then eventually you'll get shut off. And you know, my grandpa used to always tell me, those banks will be there for you until you need them. And that's kind of the way it is. But guys are getting shut down, guys looking at losing property, losing their homes, their farms, ranches, and things like that. And it's a real thing out there. Yeah, these packers in this last deal, the Sting operation that they put on last week, making, you know, $500 and $600 a head, and killing, you know, tens of thousands of them a day. Yeah, it'd be pretty greasy. But the guys that are doing the work, the grassroots guys, that they just are not able to make any money. They've got to have a price for their cattle. You know, the whole industry has gone to just feeding cattle on the basis, buying some feeder cattle that they think will hedge, and being happy with what they're going to bring, and then that would be a flush. And then they hope when everything comes to fruit, when those cattle are ready and their contract on the board matures, they hope that they'll have a little basis there, a positive basis, and it's been running $5, $6, $8 a hundred, and that's really all they make on the cattle. Well, when they continue to do that, it really makes no difference to them what the cattle are worth. You know, they can be costing $150 a hundred, or they can be costing 80 or 90, or maybe 40 or 50. You know, what difference to them does it make? I mean, they've got plenty of borrowing ability, and it's not going to be a big deal to them. Interest is pretty cheap yet, so it's not a big deal. But for the people that are actually selling the cattle, they've got to get a price for them. Told you several visits ago, you know, most of your cow-calf guys, they're not really worried about the price per pound that they're bringing, but they know that they need $1,000 a head coming back, or they need $1,200, or, you know, if they're in really good shape, maybe they got to have $850 across steers and heifers both to make things work. And that would be on the cheap end. It's usually around $1,000 or better. Well, that's the opposite of what your feeders, your mainstream corporate feeders are thinking. They're just thinking about it's all about the basis. We've talked about that. But if we don't get these prices up, it's starting to remind me of 1998. If you remember that, they kept whittling on the hog, the independent hog producers, and kept whittling on them, till finally they got your straight hogs down to 8 cents a pound, and it eliminated all of them, and they have not been back. Some of them might be contract feeders for some big outfits, but they're not independent hog producers. No such thing as an independent hog producer anymore, and we've got to do something. I was telling several guys today, it's pretty bad whenever you're hoping that the Packers and Stockyards Administration does something, because they've really never done anything. And if we're hoping for them, we got pretty empty hopes out there. But something's got to be done. Somebody's got to step up to the plate. Hopefully this RCAF lawsuit will come true, and we'll find a judge that'll put some big penalties on there. Maybe some appropriations will be paid. Something's got to happen. That we're starting to lose a lot of them, and it's taken a few years of bad years, but this is going to be the worst, and there's going to be some guys that don't come through it. A lot of them, and a lot of outfits that's been in business for a long time that are barely going to be clinging on. Going to talk about one here that announced on Monday they're going to be closing their doors, and it's one of these deals we've been talking about. Everybody thinks, well, we got to start processing these cattle ourselves. Valley Oak Steak Company, from just east of Kansas City there, near Lone Jack, Missouri, and Johnson County. It was a deal that hasn't been around for a lot of years. I heard about it. It was as they were building it up there several years ago when I was in Missouri, living there, not far from there. But they had the idea of coming in with state-of-the-art feeding operation, keeping it small. They put in a state-of-the-art processing facility there. They were employing about 80 people, and their whole premise was to have the highest quality and freshest beef that you can possibly get for high-end customers. Some restaurants around the Kansas City area there, had a meat market there, offering the very, very best and highest quality and freshest meat beef that you can possibly get. They were feeding just a few hundred cattle there. They had 100% containment of their waste. They were collecting every bit of it, no runoff, under a shed and everything. And they were keeping that manure back and making fertilizer out of it, offering that fertilizer up for free to local farmers and vegetable growers and things around there. And it was starting to work. People were liking it. I knew some of the guys that were helping them get their feeder cattle procured, and they were buying the top, highest quality feeder cattle that they could get, mostly local calves right around that area, and doing it right and getting them in with the right people that were helping them do that. Everything was going pretty good. And then they needed to get some economies of scale. They needed to start feeding a few more cattle and start making it work. And then they applied for a certificate to expand. So they had to do that. And once they did that, that's when the local government shut them down. There was a neighbor, and not all that close, but Powell Gardens, which is a botanical gardens there in the area, and which I'm not sure how many people that garden was feeding. I'm pretty sure it was 0. But they come in there, and they had some friendships in high places, and used some people like that crooked Claire McCaskill, that was Missouri senator till the voters finally retired her the last time around, and now you get to see her sour face on one of the news sources as somebody that really supposed to know what's going on. She got in there, and she did everything she could do to keep them from expanding. And I tell you what, it was a miserable deal as they were going through. They ended up having to take some of their cattle to another feedlot that really didn't go good with the way they were trying to operate there. And finally, they just got tired of fighting it. They had several lawsuits that were filed against them with help from this Powell Gardens thing and some of the governments, local governments, going against them. And they weren't even affecting anybody. They had 100% control of their runoff. They didn't have a fly problem, didn't have a smell problem. Just they were in the country. I mean, it was fairly close to Kansas City, but they were in the rural area. That's where you do that kind of stuff. And they finally gave it up. They had some of their cattle that were shot. As they were standing in the pens outside there. Their family, their children were harassed for what they were doing there, and then they finally decided to give it up. And like I told you guys, if it's we're talking about building a processing facility, a packing plant to try to compete, that would be great if it would work. But if one thing doesn't get you, then the other thing gets you. These guys kind of slipped under the radar. They weren't competing with the big corporate packing plants. They were just trying to keep things local, but really doing a good job there. And then local governments got them, and liberal ideas and things like that's what put them out. But that's kind of what we're facing here, and it's not just a deal where your packers are making more money than what, and your feeder guys think they should be getting it. No, guys are going out of business. We're going to lose those people, and I'm not sure that's not the whole idea in the first place. But let's look at the board for Monday. August live cattle futures up 27 cents at $100.20. October up 17 at 98.22. Looking on out into your live cattle contracts, April, of course, is always the highest, and it's trading up there around 111.35, which wouldn't have sounded very high there a couple of weeks ago, but it sounds awful high to where our nearbys are trading now. August feeder cattle up $1.10 at 135.67. August is by far the highest traded contract that shows on your feeder cattle board. September's up 45 at 132.82. So not looking real promising for some of your fall calf trade that's going to be coming up here pretty darn quick. Weighted average on last week's fat cattle sales in your 5-area negotiated trade only sold 44,900 head. The packers need more than that. Yes, we need to move more than that too, but the packers need to buy significantly more than that. I don't care if Holcomb, Kansas is dark right now. They still got to have more cattle than that. Significantly more. That just under 45,000 head compares to 60,800, which was a little on the light side a week ago, and 101,200 head the same week a year ago. Look at your live sales. 105 to 111 was the range on live steers and heifers, mostly 105 to 107. Your weighted average on live steers was 106.68, which was down $5.69 from the previous week's weighted average. But that 106.68 compares with the weighted average through Thursday of last week, so not counting Friday, which was 105.40. So your weighted average went up over $1. That means a lot of cattle were selling Friday on the high side there. A lot of your cattle, bigger strings bringing 107, and then there was a lot of cattle up there at 110. Some of those higher quality cattle that the packers are having a hard time finding in the northern plains, they paid $1.10 for some of those, brought it up quite a bit. That goes to show you they need cattle. Don't sell them any unless they up the price significantly. Maybe the $5 or $6 that we lost. Don't sell them any and see what happens. Just try it. But, everybody's been fairly current, although your show lists are up big this week. I'm not sure why we put out a show list report or why they even gather that information. It really doesn't mean anything. It dashes your hopes and squashes your dreams, and it's not that they're going to sell all those cattle on the show list anyway. They've been carry cattle over. We've been pulling cattle ahead. Everybody's pretty current, so why worry about that? Your dressed steers and heifers had a price range from 165 to 178, mostly 168 to 172. And your weighted average on dress steers was 170.95, down $11.28 from just the previous week before that fire. Nationwide, only 53,800 head sold in the entire nation negotiated last week, and only 8% of those for the 15 to 30 day delivery. But let's look at some other things that are going on this week. Superior Livestock started their Bighorn Classic sale, which will run this week up in Sheridan, Wyoming. And I tell you what, here we are facing that market, and it was similar to some of the videos that ended up trying to sell cattle last week, like Western did on the calves. The Yearling deal okay, but they were selling calves on Monday on the Bighorn Classic, and in a lot of those calf deals, guys were scratching them, maybe moving them to a later sale. You cannot blame them a bit, because they know this whole deal was artificially put on and kind of overblown, and they're hoping that it'll come back. But a lot of guys went ahead and sold too, because who knows what's going to happen. But most of your steer calves, and on the Monday sales, a lot of them in the southeast, a lot of them down in central South Texas and places like that. But your steer calves, in typical weights for fall delivery, 5 and 6 weights, we're mostly bringing in the 130s and the 140s. And that doesn't make anybody very happy. I understand that. Few of your heavy calves being delivered right off the cow there, weighing 700 plus, maybe into the low 8s, bringing down in the 120s. And I tell you, that is a featured sale right there, normally bringing all kinds of top prices. We've just had this whole fire deal, and then the big sting that happened from it just completely wipe everybody out. And it's that's the only check a lot of those ranchers are going to get. Just think how much less it's going to be than what it would have been. But I'm going to pull out a couple of top sales here that look pretty good on there. Look at here at Gates Angus Ranch in Coldwater, Kansas. They sold 100 head. I know on the lighter side, we had to get them lighter to get up there to an impressive price. But 100 head of top quality calves right off the cow at delivery, 465 pounds, early October delivery. No special programs, just good genetics and shots. But 100 head of 465 pounders bring 176, Coldwater, Kansas. Another deal, Mayfield Ranchers, Deming, New Mexico, down there in the desert. And you don't think that's a desert? Look at those pictures there, that's horrible. But Deming, New Mexico has always been a desert, always will be. But they've got some good cattle down there. 126 head. Look what this guy did to add value to his calves. Butch Mayfield at the Mayfield Ranches there. He has offered a lot of extra value in there. They've got all the programs. I realize that it's fairly easy to put programs on calves, but not weaned calves, 45 days weaned. These cattle got all the programs, and they're 45 days weaned. That means something right there for November, late November, early December delivery. But look at this, 126 head of them, weigh 380 at delivery, bring 217. So just kind of watch other people that are being successful, and you see the value he added to those cattle, and he got paid for it there. Now look at your big sales on Monday. Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma National Stockyard's light run. You can't blame people for not wanting to sell in this. 2,400 head. Feeders are $4 to $6 higher. That compares to $6 to $12 lower a week ago when we were right in the middle of that fear and turmoil, and that balances out to about where we're at on our market, anywhere from $2 to $6 lower than we were before that big mess happened. Calves were not well tested. You look at this one individual quote from National Livestock Commission there, who shares their sales with Cattle Market Central here, where I can quote them. But National Livestock sold 51 head of 813 pound steers at $137.50. That was the top of your light 8 weights right there. They actually had one deal weighing in the heavy 8s that brought just a few cents more, but some light 8 weight steers, a load of them at $137.50. That's higher than what your index is based on an 800 pound steer. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central ended the day on Monday at 136.05, which was actually up 30 cents. And you see, after all this jostling around, just about lined back up with your CME cash feeder cattle index that's bringing up the rear there. Talk about another sale. Joplin Regional Stockyard, 1,700 head. Very, very light runs for these big high volume sale barns. 1,700 in Joplin. Feeders there steady to $2 lower compared to $3 to $7 lower, or excuse me, feeder steers steady to $2 higher, and that compares to the $3 to $7 lower that they had last week, and we're right back in there to that anywhere from week 1 or 2 to $5 lower. Calves were about steady. That's where everybody's getting screwed, because last week your calves were $10 to $16 lower, and they're steady this week. What a fire in a plant has to do with lightweight calves, I have no idea. But look at a couple of more individual quotes there. Bluegrass Stockyards, Lexington, Kentucky, still having sales. They had their big barbecue customer appreciation deal last week, right in the middle of the storm. But 77 head of 702-pound steers bring 150. That's pretty darn good, because there's a lot of top quality 500-pound calves you get back here west that are just bringing 150, and this was on 700-pound calves. Russell, Iowa, Russell Livestock Market, 63 head of 809-pound green grass yearlings there. I heard about these cattle at 147.75. That's your feeder flash for Tuesday.